example, I've told you that we are doing all these projects, okay? None of my family is actually fully involved in all these things because my children, they are all connected to what they are doing. And so my wife is running her own shop most of the time. And so I've employed, okay, some men. One is managing animal farm, animal business. The other one is managing other projects, okay? So we have 3 people. Now, not on that, I've also put in place a team, okay, of learned men, educated men who have been infused into the ministry so that I'm also accountable before God and before men with the resources which we are able to receive either from outside or from the revenues, the businesses we are doing. I am able to be accountable to people. As someone who is managing, I'm not there to be the finance manager. Okay? I'm not there to do the secretarial work. I'm there to provide oversight over the ministry, and in this case, you provide oversight over the church. You as a pastor, and then you have leaders. And when you're talking about leaders, you also need to train your leaders, because this is another thing which is lacking in many churches. You find maybe there's only the pastor who is there who has got some basic theological training, but the people under him or with him, they've got no training for the positions which they've been elected to serve into. So you train your leaders as well. When you train the leaders, they are going to be a better hand for you. And there is also another question my brother wanted me to digest, which is how the church also raises its own raises its own fund. It's important. Churches, mainly here in Zambia or in Africa, we raise our income through offerings and tithes. And some churches, they do some projects, small projects. Maybe they go to the local authority, they ask to be given an opportunity to be washing cars. And so the church is given that kind of a project, and they begin to raise some money from that. Maybe youths, they go and work in a farm, and they are given some money, and so they put those monies into the coffers of the youths as well. And so mainly the church in Zambia or in Africa, these are the 2 main sources of raising of money. It is the offerings and tithes. And in some churches, they've got some fundraising programs. Okay? They've got some fundraising programs where they invite other people to come and also support them. But for you as men of God, it is also important for you to see to it that even when you're talking about fundraising, you consider those avenues which are not in conflict with the Bible. Okay? Because I know of some fundraising ventures which other churches are able to put together. Sometimes they'll come up with a show, and within that same celebration, they also buy beers, and then they begin to sell. We know what goes on as a way of fundraising. So you need to be mindful. Or maybe you want to come up with a business of selling cigarettes and selling alcohol. Okay? You need to be aware in terms of your limits that you are a child of God. Because by involving in such kind of businesses, or what you are doing, in a way, you are inviting and doing that which is forbidden and being a danger to other people's lives, instead of you being a savior, okay, to people's lives. So what I'm saying, you also need to be careful with the kind of business you have to do, even when talking about the tent making. Okay? So basically, those are the avenues our churches mainly use to raise income. That's why I've said they are very limited.
Address, if you will, how the monies that you receive are spent.
Okay, in church, as we know, we are supposed to have two treasurers. Avoid a tendency as a pastor or as a Christian leader of being a treasurer or a manager of church resources. Are we together?
Yes.
Avoid exposing when you marry. Don't allow your wife to being a treasurer of the church and not even having any position in the church. I'm talking about your wives, because your wife also fall under your office. Okay? You work together in managing and leading that church. So you appoint the two treasurers. And so once the money is collected from the people have given, the two treasurers are supposed to be present when counting. The church secretary, are we together? The church secretary is also supposed to be present, because the treasurers, they've got their own record book. The church secretary should also have his own record book. Are we together? So that when giving financial reports, the report coming from the treasurers and coming from the secretary in terms of the income of resources on different dates should correspond. Are we together? Yes. Never allow church money to be borrowed by members. Don't allow a system of borrowing or keeping money in your homes. In case of Marilo, you will know what happens. Or Matenda, in terms of sickness or deaths. Or if you borrow someone who is your member, and then they fail to pay, what happens? They'll stop coming to church. When you talk to them about the monies, they'll tell you that money does not belong to you. We know what happens. So, you don't wait until a problem comes up. You have to document all these things. You have to write them down. Guidelines on how to manage finances in the church. Who takes the offering? Who accounts for the offering? Who goes to deposit the offering? And also allow for constant financial reports to come to the church as well, to the church members. Because the more often they receive those financial reports, the more they are motivated, because they know where the money is going, they know what is remaining, and so they are able to support. So in terms of usage of the church support money, the church money that is coming, if the pastor is there, the pastor is supposed to be the number one beneficiary. I'm coming, my dear brother, I'm coming from a church where the pastor who is trained is there. And then they're building a caretaker's house. And the treasurers will say, today all the tithes, all the offerings which have been raised, they are going to go towards buying blocks and cement so that we build the caretaker's house. And the pastor has been there without getting any support from the local church. Friends, if we mean business, the number one beneficiary of the church collections is supposed to be who? The pastor. Okay? Now, the pastor is not the only needy person, where monies are supposed to be spent. We take care of electricity as well, where you know there's electricity, you know where you pay for water, for example. Maybe you want to raise money to pay for, you want to buy music systems in the church. You want to build a better structure or to renovate the current structure, okay? So those are some of the avenues, okay, in which the monies are supposed to be used. When you have debts, Mariro, you can also tap into that. When you are going for conferences, going for retreats, the monies that is coming in the church are supposed to pay for that.
Let me have you address briefly, because our time is about up.
Okay.
Address budgeting. Do I need to explain?
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
Okay.
Okay, the aspect of budgeting, the way I'm going to recommend it to you, if as a pastor, you are supposed to sit with all departmental leaders of your church. When I'm talking about departmental leaders, you are talking about those leading women, leading men, leading the youths, and leading the children. Are we together? And then they should be able to let you know through the budgets committee. You put a budgets committee in place comprising of the treasurers, the secretary. You can also appoint some independent members to sit into that committee to come up with the annual budget of the church. But how you collect information which you can use for you to come up with what you can call as a church budget is by working through those departmental leaders. They should be able to give to you and to this committee, okay? Because as a pastor, you are the leader of the church, right? You are also the leader of the committees that are put in place within your church. So you allow for those departmental leaders to submit their small budget, their budgets, in terms of what program do they want to do in that particular year. Are we together? So if they submit all the programs and also their budgets, those budgets are presented to the budgets committee. Now, apart from that, you as a pastor, you also need to come up with programs and recommend programs to the church as well. For example, as a pastor, where else do you want to start new churches? As a pastor, what material do you need for your church development? Are we together? So you need to put all those things in the budget in terms of learning materials. Because in some churches, you find there are no materials that are considered for the spiritual development of the church. So you come up with all that budget, and you also fuse it into the hands of the budgets committee for them now to come up with what is called as a church annual budget. Are we together? Now, once that budget is formulated, it becomes easy at the implementation, because when programs begin to take off, for example, you as youths, you want to go for your conference, because you were already budgeted for, you always find, you are likely to find money. That's why when the budgets committee, they sit now to look at the entire budget, they need now to look at avenues, means and ways of meeting that budget. They consider how many tithers in church. They consider how much offering is expected to come. They consider what other projects they are going to do in that year to support that budget. So that when you begin to have your programs in the course of the year, you can still go to the treasurers, and because you are already budgeted for, you find your programs being attended to financially. So basically, that's how a budget is supposed to be formulated. But there is a need, my dear brother, in many of our churches, even where I'm coming from, churches are existing without a budget. It is hand to mouth. Whatever comes is spent, and they start planning, looking in the future.